Hi everyone, it's Hannah, and please excuse my voice. I'm having a really bad cold, but I sure hope you are in a very good shape for today's video because it is going to be a hard one. We're talking process diagrams or flowcharts. Honestly, they aren't the scariest thing that you can see in the exam. They're still tasks too, remember? But things can go downhill pretty fast if you're not prepared. So, let's get started. A process diagram is a drawing that illustrates or visually explains a thing or an idea by outlining its component parts and the relationships among them. In short, process diagrams show steps or stages in a process. In IELTS Writing Task 1, you may be asked to summarize the diagram. You'll see something like this. We have steps and arrows between steps. The most common type of process in IELTS Writing Task 1 is a man-made or factory process of producing something, say, bricks or chocolate. And the steps will show how the process happens. If you see an arrow here, it becomes a cycle. This is more common as natural cycles, ones like water cycle or a life cycle of a certain animal. But the techniques for both types are actually the same. We basically describe stages one by one. Describing a process is, however, completely different from describing a table or the last 3 charts we talked about. Let's look at some of the differences. Most of the time, there are no numbers, so you can't compare anything, and you can't describe trends either. So, what can we describe? Fear not, my friends, there are still plenty of things to mention, like how many steps there are, where the process begins and ends, and what happens in each step. One other thing to look at is the language for process description. First up, sequencing language. This is where being organized come in handy. Sequencing language basically comprises of phrases and expressions of order. Here are some pretty useful ones I've gathered for you, and I suggest taking screenshots of them for later revision. There are also some verbs that you may use in the process diagram reports. They are divided into 3 main groups: solids related, liquids related, and gases related. I'm showing you the most common ones, and yes, you do have to remember them all. Here's a little tip. Time is always limited, and you will feel even more rushed coming across this difficult chart. To help plan your answer, write the different verbs you will use to describe each stage on the diagram itself. This will help to make sure you don't miss out any important steps in your description. We generally use the simple present tense for this type of question because times are not usually shown, and a key grammatical area is very often the passive. We use this when it is not important who does the action. But passives are not exactly everybody's favorite, as I've heard. These I consider to be fairly simple and can be used to lengthen your sentences, but then again, they also backfired if used incorrectly. Look at this example. We can't see who exactly is doing the steps, so if we're gonna go with active voice, we'll have to say, people either put the clay in a mold to form into bricks or cut it with a wire cutter. And if you're gonna have to admit, it's worth a band 5, whereas with passive voice, the clay can be shaped into bricks in 2 ways. Either it is put in a mold or a wire cutter is used. The sentence comes out so much more polished. I'm pretty sure there are plenty of exercises on passive forms, so you guys might want to check those out and also learn by heart the past participle forms of popular verbs. That was a lot to take in, huh? Let's change it up and see how all we've discussed applies to a real question. The diagrams show the stages and equipment used in the cement making process and how cement is used to produce concrete for building purposes. I know what you're thinking. What if there are a ton of words that you just have no idea what they mean? But no worries. If there are any difficult technical words in the diagram or chart or graph, they will be explained. The report structure is still the same. We'll start with the introduction by paraphrasing the question as usual. The diagrams illustrate the phases and apparatus to make cement and how cement is utilized in the production of concrete for construction. Notice words like phases, apparatus utilized in construction to further extend your vocabulary and avoid repetition. Right after the intro, we move on to a very important step, reading the diagram and finding the beginnings and the ends. Sometimes they are evident, frequently they are less so. This is important information because it will help structure your writing. The obvious thing to do here is to start at the beginning and carry on until you get to the end. After you've determined on what to write, begin working on the second paragraph with 2 overview sentences. The production of cement involves a 5-stage linear process that begins with the mixing of raw materials and culminates in the packaging of new cement. Making concrete is a simpler process that involves mixing 4 ingredients in a concrete mixer. You will notice that this model answer has mentioned how many stages there are, how raw materials were used, if it is linear, or cyclical, what happens in the beginning and what the result is. Easy peasy. In paragraphs 3 and 4, the details paragraph, you need to describe the process step by step. Include the first and last steps that you mentioned in the summary, but try to describe them in more detail or in a different way. The third paragraph looks at cement production in much more detail. The examiner is looking for your ability to highlight the main features and sequence them effectively. Limestone and clay are crushed, and the resulting powder is then mixed before being passed through a rotating heater. Once heated, this mixture travels over a conveyor belt and is ground through a grinder. Now that the cement has been produced, it is packaged and transported to a building site where it can be used to make concrete. The fourth paragraph details the process of concrete production. This is a much simpler process and does not require so much sequencing. There are some percentages, so it does allow us to show the examiner that we can use the language of proportions instead of just repeating all the numbers. Concrete is made up of half gravel, quarter sand, 10% water, and 15% cement. All of these are added together in a cylindrical drum and rotated until concrete is yielded. And our very concise Band 9 report is all done. You could describe the steps in one paragraph, but it looks more organized if you break the description into 2 paragraphs. If there are 2 processes going on, like our example here, perfect. If not, just start paragraph 4 somewhere in the middle of the process. And remember, in this type of question, every stage counts, so you better not miss anything. Okay, I know you're about to burst out laughing about how impractical this upcoming tip is, but I just want to say that it really helps and is actually a decent pastime. Try drawing your own diagram of an everyday machine in your home, a washing machine for example, and divide the process up into different stages and describe it. Better make use of every chance to improve, right? Thank goodness we got this one out of the way. Process diagrams are definitely not a fan favorite, nor are given too often in recent IELTS exam. So don't worry if you're a little intimidated. Everything takes time and practice. Also, I can't believe we're almost done with this series, with only one more video to come. Next time, we'll tackle maps. And until then, bye.